With the Crowfall beta being around for a couple of days already, I thought it was a good time to finally share my first impressions of the game. For those of you who haven't heard of Crowfall, or don't really know what it's about, Crowfall describes itself as a throne war simulator. First you go into the PvE world, where you level your character quickly to the max level. That's not really the main point in the game. Then you can join the PvP campaigns once you're at least level 20, but being level 30 is more than recommended since that's just the max level and you get there so quickly. Here you actually fight to take control of the map. Every campaign has a set of criteria for you and your guild, group, faction to follow in order to win it. These campaigns are actually set by a real life amount of time where you have to follow that criteria and win the map, or else the map just gets completely destroyed and you're first to move on to the next campaign. And with that, let's move on to my first impressions. So first we'll start with the good of this game, and honestly this list is kind of smaller than the bad, but there's still some good in this game. So first, this game actually starts with a lot of races and a good amount of classes right from the beginning, since this is a game that's still in beta. So the game actually starts with 12 races and 11 base classes, and those classes actually will branch off later on in the game. And then the character customization for those characters that you're going to make is okay. It's not really special. There's not a bunch of really small details, but it's not just nothing. You can make your character look kind of different, but in general, it's mostly the amount of classes that's a good part. Next is the quick leveling. You're never stuck using just 1 to 2 abilities at a time. You will level quickly. The point of the game is to get to the end game and then to join the PvP. You go into that PvE world and then you level up your character and just learn how the game works. Kind of. But we'll talk about that later in the other part of the list. Next is this game has some huge PvP, which is obviously the point of the game, right? So you take your guild or group or whatever part you're with, and then you fight for territory, and you try to take control of it in order to win the map, like I said earlier. And that's actually probably the coolest part of this game. So the PvP in this game is actually mostly organized through a siege schedule. Once you're in the campaign world for PvP, it'll tell you go to these areas. These are the times you should be fighting for these areas. You can actually go out and fight just whenever. You can. Some people even plan their fights. But if you're unsure, you just join your guild and have them go to those areas where the siege schedule is telling you to go. Next, we'll go into the things that are just okay about the game. So, for your skill tree, there's actually a pretty decent amount of options. It's not crazy amount, but you get a pretty decent amount of skills. You can choose which direction you want to go. Like I played the Confessor. You could go down a route where you choose to go more CC. You can choose the route more damage. Whatever, there actually is a class advancement. It doesn't really show as a big deal. Every class has 2 or 3 options, I believe, that they can pick at around level 20 to move on. So you do have choices on what you want to do if you don't just like the base classes. Next, I want to talk about the crafting system. It's really basic, but there's nothing wrong with it, so I can't say it's bad. I'm sure there are going to be more options down the line since this is a beta, but it does what it needs to. Gathering resources, you just chop down trees, you need a pickaxe to get rocks, you can use your stuff to build stuff. It's really simple, not a million options, but it does what it needs to. Next, I want to talk about the graphics. I don't think they're good or bad. A lot of people have been kind of trash talking the graphics, but I don't even think they're that bad. It's just kind of outdated. I guess people might have just been disappointed waiting this long, because the graphics definitely don't feel like they're from 2020. But I wouldn't go back to say that they belong more than 10 years in the past. The graphics are clean. That's not even an issue at all. Oh boy, so now I want to move on to the bad of this game. It makes me really sad to have to drop all this on, but it's necessary. So one thing that might not be as big of a deal to some people as it kind of is to me is you can't play this game alone. You can play the PvE part alone, Once they add the rest of the quests in, at least. But we'll get back into that too. So you cannot play this game alone. You have to join a guild or a faction because you cannot do the PvP by yourself, which is really annoying. And the guild applications, since it's such a big deal, I don't know if this is on purpose or not, but you actually have to apply for the guilds out of the game. You need to go into the Crowfall forums and find a guild and apply there, like a job application. It's kind of cool, but it seems a little extra also. And another huge part of this game that I do have an issue with is that there's so little information on how the PvP works, which is actually the main point of the game. I know how to fight, I know how to do my crafting, I know how to move and everything, but it just doesn't tell you anything. I actually got a character stuck in a campaign that was underleveled and I had no guild or anything because I didn't know I could leave it, which is kind of my fault. I could have researched it, but game told me nothing. I learned more from the general chat and Reddit and some random forum posts than the game taught me. They really need to add that in. Next, when I was talking about the quest earlier, it would be okay to go into level 30 by yourself, but it actually gets really hard around level 17 or 18. I believe the questline actually ends at level 17 or 18. You breeze through those first 18 levels. But since they didn't actually add the last chapters of the single player game, you have to just grind it by yourself. You have to hope you find a group so you can actually kill everything pretty quickly, which would be fine. That's not even that big of a deal. But the bigger deal is the mobs are so small and spread out that it takes so long to level up. We actually found a couple spots where it was relatively fast, but before we were able to kill those, I just found a random group to play with. Before we were able to kill those mobs, we had to kill these spiders. Normal MMO things. But you were lucky to find 3 or 4 in one spot, and then they take forever to respawn, so we just decided to move on to the next area. And lastly, I want to talk about the combat. The combat's really disappointing me the most. I don't want to just say it's bad, but it almost feels like this game should have been tab targeted, unfortunately, because when you hit stuff, it doesn't really feel like there's any impact on it. If I hit them with a dagger versus a huge axe, it feels the same. I'll shoot fireballs, it doesn't really feel like they're getting hit by anything. It just feels like as soon as the fireball's in the same spot, a number just pops up. And that's one of the biggest issues I have. It's somewhere in between a tab targeting and an action RPG, which honestly is, I think, the worst thing in an MMO. I know some games are like it, but they could take a piece from... I played Phantasy Star Online 2, and it's kind of like this style. It's not full on like Terra or Vindictus, but it's kind of an in-between. But it actually feels like I'm hitting things in that game. But this game, they really just need to polish up that combat. Lastly, here's some of my general thoughts for the game. The idea of this game is actually really cool. I'm not really a huge PvP player, but I would be able to play this game. I just need to find my guild and group. But once they fix all these issues, if they do, hopefully, this game can definitely have a strong and healthy community. This is different from your normal MMO, right? And for those of you who are thinking of playing it, I really do recommend trying it out, but I do not recommend paying to get to the front of the line. You can actually pay $50 to skip the line and just go straight into the beta right now. But you can still sign up and get there for free eventually. It'll probably take a while if you sign up right now. But I do recommend at least checking it out. This game really feels like it has a lot of potential, and I really hope it can get there, because I think it'll be super fun. And if it doesn't reach that potential, this game might be dead on arrival right after it launches fully, but I really don't want to see that.